Hooray. January is always 8 months long. Okay, we should be set.
So all you young farts, I'm getting vaccinated tomorrow. Eat your heart out.
All right. Well, that's great news. Everyone, welcome to this evening's City Council meeting. It is January 26, 2021. It is 7:03 p.m. And I will call this meeting to order. And Summer, will you take us through a roll call, please?
Yes, we have Mayor Emily Niehaus, Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council, Brett Edge, Police Chief, Carly Castle, Assistant City Manager, Joel Linares, City Manager, Karen Guzman-Newton, Moab City Council, Lori Simonson, City Attorney, Lisa Church, Communications and Engagement Manager, Mike Duncan, Moab City Council, Ronnie Duressery, Moab City Council, and Tony Knudsen-Boyd, Moab City Council.
Thank you so much. I just want to say we're now in section 2, citizens to be heard. And I know that I've put some updates right at the beginning of the meeting. And I think that's caused some confusion to those that are interested in making comments. So forevermore, I will not do that. So I just wanted to make that statement and apologize to the confusion that that has caused. I apologize for that. We are in citizens to be heard, and we're receiving public comments in 2 ways. One, by somebody joining us today and commenting live with us over Zoom, but we're also receiving handwritten comments submitted to us digitally. Summer, I looked, we've got 1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so hopefully we've all had a chance to review that. And it looks like we have, well, I think we have a presenter here with us, but
we have a presenter. She was in the waiting room and I just brought everybody in, so.
Great, and it looks like we've got some cell phones. So we are now at citizens to be heard. So if you are the phone number, I guess we'll start with ending in 4685. Looks like you are already unmuted. Would you like to go ahead and state your name and make your comments?
Yeah, this is Sarah Melnikoff. I hope you can hear me.
We can. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. So I wanted to share with the council that I was deeply moved to receive the Citizen Service Award earlier this month from the Moab City Police. I hold the Moab Police Department and the officers in the highest regard. I don't know if people realize what it's like, but they put their lives on the line every time they report for duty. And that blows me away. So we are more than happy to help them whenever they need help. And a lot of times that's beyond the normal office hours. So I just wanted to say that 2020 was a record year for us as far as the assists that we gave. Our regular assists, we spent about $35,000. And then because of some people who were very generous and wanted to give cash to people that wouldn't be eligible for other things, we spent another $33,000. So in 2020, we spent almost $69,000 on assists. That is off the charts and a huge record. We hope to be able to keep doing that. In December, we spent over $7,226, a lot of it on rent and things of that nature. But regarding the partnership I feel I have with the police, and I've known Brett Edge since he was a patrol officer, just really thrilled to be able to work with them. And I just wanted to thank the chief and the great people of the Moab City Police Department. That's all.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for those comments. Much appreciated. Okay, the next number that I have is a cell phone ending in what looks like 1704.
Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome. State your name.
Hi, this is Chloe Hedden, and good evening, Mayor, Emily, City Council, and staff. I have a prepared comment here about UTV, so I'd just like to read that.
Go ahead.
Based on the demand letter that the pro-UTV special interest group sent to the county last week, I believe it is clear that they will stop at nothing to assert their quote unquote right to destroy the peaceful environment of our homes and neighborhoods. In taking a litigious stance against the county, the pro-UTV groups in Utah have been clear with their intention to subordinate the needs of the local community. We need to stand united in strength as a community to unequivocally assert our right to the peaceful enjoyment of our homes and neighborhoods. Loud recreation is a privilege, not a right, and that privilege has been squandered. With regard to the UTV rental business and guide outfits, as we all know, the UTV noise problem is out of control in Moab and needs immediate attention. I believe the city should use all the tools in the toolbox to address the problem. I support the City Council's temporary moratorium on new UTV rental businesses and events. Now is not the time to nibble around the edges. Residents are being severely impacted, and the City Council needs to respond with bold actions on all available fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for your comment.
Yes.
Okay, and it looks like I've got a cell phone ending in 0534. So we've got one more cell phone unidentified participant. If you've got a cell phone, 2600534, you are welcome to unmute and make your comment.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Welcome.
Okay. Hi, Emily. This is Pete Gross.
Hi, Pete.
And also hello to all the council members. I'd like to sort of echo Chloe's comments, but I want to address the issue of excessive noise. My first point relates directly to the moratorium. I read part of the Blue Ribbon Coalition letter to the council, and I had to say it was almost comical and absurd to me to assert that the moratorium violates their First Amendment rights. It's kind of new to me that excessive noise from motor vehicles and UTVs in particular qualifies as protected speech under the First Amendment. My second point is I want to address I want to revisit the possibility of looking at possibly strengthening and definitely enforcing the noise ordinance. Cliff Kuntz seems to have steered the discussion down a rabbit hole by emphasizing the Society of Automotive Engineers J1287 standard, which is measuring the noise from a stationary vehicle from the tailpipe. If you go to the SAE website, they specifically advised against the SAE J1287 for measuring actual noise under operating conditions, and they specifically recommended two other SAE standards. Also, I don't know if he talked about it in one of the meetings, but he did mention a 96 decibel noise level standard. And that is not from the Society of Automotive Engineers. They impose no such standard. That standard came from the Specialty Vehicle Institute of America and the Motorcycle Industry Council recommendation for off-road use. And they also specifically state in that recommendation, local and regional limitations may be stronger. So I'd like to go back to on the October 21st meeting, Mike Duncan demonstrated how with a simple handheld meter, he was able to unambiguously identify a vehicle exceeding a prescribed limit. And I just like to echo that his methodology is sound, perfectly sound. I studied math and mechanical engineering, and that's just basic physics. He mentioned the inverse square law. Just as an example, from my front doorstep, I live in a pretty well insulated house. I'm quite a distance from Mill Creek Drive. One evening, the noise was so loud, I ran out my front door with my decibel meter, and I measured from my doorstep a 70 decibel meter level. Now, that's really not very loud. That's about conversational, but it was enough that it was irritating from inside the house. But just using the mathematical definition of a logarithm and the inverse square law, which Mike Duncan referenced, I calculated that that sound level was 94 decibels at 25 feet distance, which is far in excess of any reasonable noise standard. So I just want to suggest that the council look further into a noise ordinance and enforcing it. And I don't think it's nearly as onerous or difficult as we've been led to believe by Cliff Kuntz. You can do it with a simple handheld meter. And I'm not a legal expert. I don't know, what it takes to enforce it. To make a stick in court if somebody challenges it. But from a physics standpoint, you can unambiguously determine an individual vehicle that is far in excess of a certain noise. Anyway, I thank you for listening to my comments. I apologize if I rambled a little bit, but thank you again for everything you guys are doing to help us mitigate noise.
Thank you, Pete, for your comments tonight. Thanks for joining us virtually.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That was the last unidentified caller that I see. Summer, is there anybody else in a waiting room somewhere that we can't see?
I have a Dan Kent that should be popping in.
Looks like connecting to audio now. Danny Kent, can you hear me?
Oops, I can hear you now.
Okay, I can hear you as well. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
You are free to make your comments now.
Oh, wonderful. I just wanted to real quickly just say, I really appreciate the direction that you guys are going and the things that you're trying to do about UTV control in this town. And I think that it's absolutely vital to keeping the character of this town the way it is. We've been overrun in the last couple of years and we got to do something now and you guys are doing it. So I appreciate it. And I just want to give you extra ballast in terms of if you choose to take on the potential legal threats from Blue Ribbon Coalition and others, I hope that you have a lot of backing from the people in town and from environmental groups across the nation that realize that Moab's a proving ground for just this kind of abuse.
Thank you for calling in tonight and for your comments.
You bet. I'm going to let you go now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Summer, is there anyone else?
I have Roz McCann, but she is one of our presenters. So do you want me to go ahead and bring her in or?
Well, we do have a small handful of administrative reports before her presentation. So as well as Amanda's presentation. So it'll be up to you if you want to bring them in or just leave them in the waiting room until we get to them. They might appreciate the waiting room. I'd put them in the waiting room. I'd like to wait if I were them. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we are now at administrative reports. And I just want to thank the people that made the effort to call in tonight. It does help a great deal, I think, getting comments virtually in person. So, okay, administrative reports, item number 3 on our agenda. 3.1 COVID-19 updates. I do not have anyone from the hospital or the health department joining us tonight. I know that people have continued to have questions about vaccinations, and I am told to tell all to call the health department. When they opened up their Ready to Vaccinate website, I am told that in 8 minutes the slots were full. So, there are only so many. They are doing the best they can. Again, this is a very unique situation. So even technology, while we say, gosh, their website was complicated, I give them a little bit of slack because when you have to create technology for one event, it's, it's just you do the best that you can. So I'm grateful to the health department and I'm glad that vaccines are coming in and slowly rolling out, and the hospital is also doing what they can to get vaccines and vaccinate our frontline workers. That's it from the health department and hospital, though. So Joel, I'll turn it over to you for COVID updates for the city.
My understanding, Mayor, is that they are still only doing those 70 and older and for first responders. frontline workers. So hoping that at some point we move past that and start getting into everyone else. But right now, that's still the
They
prerequisite.
are also vaccinating teachers.
I think they classify as frontline responders to me. They can, that's a hard job, and then I'll let them get that vaccination and I'll be doing this.
Yeah.
But we currently have 97 cases in the community, 569 total. It's one of our highest caseloads that we've carried at any one time since this has started. So we're absolutely still at the peak. A lot of information is coming forward that's starting to say that it's in decline. But until we see that in the numbers, we're still at the highest point that we've been up till now with the variants that are coming out and the response to the variants. It's concerning. City Hall is still closed to the public, but it's still open and operating. We're still getting a lot of stuff done. You can call in and make appointments with anyone you need to talk to, and we are still processing plans and reviews and everything else that we normally do. So still in that mode for a little bit longer. We've started budget this week. Actually last week, we're working through that. It's looking good with our revenue streams coming in what they've been the last 5 months during the COVID. It's continued to increase. And so budget's looking like it's going to be okay. But it is a process, and we'll have more updates on that as we keep working through that. We should be through the initial departments here in about the next week. So that's happening. We've started our land use code. We're starting the very beginning process of a rewrite for that. It definitely needs updated. It's one of our biggest challenges here at the city. We get in it all the time, and it doesn't answer any of our questions, and half the time leaves us guessing for what we should be doing. So that is a priority for us this year, and we've started that process, and we're going forward. I want to remind everyone that we're still under a mask order, the county and the city, and so please wear your mask. They make a big difference. All you have to do is get on the Southeastern Utah Health Department's webpage and look at our case numbers compared to Carbon and Emery counties, and the number of people here versus there, and our caseload is smaller if you scale it to include our visitors and everything. So one of the major differences, we've been under a mask order for a long time. We've been following it, and I think that shows you that it's working. I also want to thank the streets department. The last couple of snowstorms, they've been all over it, out moving all the snow off the sidewalks, getting the roads clear, and it comes whenever it comes. If it's in the middle of the night or if it's a Saturday or Sunday, they always respond. So they're doing a great job. Staff's doing a great job here at the city. I don't know if I announced this last time, but we named Levi Jones as our supervisor of the year here at the city. And we also named Chase Golson as our employee of the year. I think I did that last time, but I would hate to miss it. So we ain't gonna hurt to do it again by no means. So with that, Clint is out. He has been under the weather the last couple of days, and so we're not gonna do our finance department. We did get our numbers for January, which is 2 months back. It's the numbers from actually November, because that's how the reporting system works. And they were up. They were up about 140% from last year. And last January, November was not a COVID month, so that's 145% above a normal month previously. So the numbers are coming in really, really well. So with that said, I'm going to turn the time over to the chief, and then we'll turn it over to Lisa and Summer to talk about the Buy Local Bucks program, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Joel. Welcome, Chief. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, awesome. A few things to update you on. One of the big ones is the community review of our use of force policy. That is still ongoing. The use of force policy is such a large and important policy that we didn't want to do a single review all at once. So we have broken that down into kind of bite-sized chunks that the group can review. And each chunk, the group is allowed 3 weeks to review it and provide feedback. So we are in round 3 of those reviews. We've gotten some really, really good feedback. We've made one substantive change to the policy, and I've had some really good questions from the group that I've been able to answer, and it's led to some really good discussion. So that's going really well, and I expect that we will complete it in roughly 2 to 3 months. But it's moving a little slower than I would have liked, but we're in the middle of it, and it's going well. So I'm happy about that. While we're talking about use of force, last week we demoed a virtual reality training system that is for use of force training. And in most cases, these systems require an entire room, a large room, and they provide, about 270 degrees of virtual reality training with screens all the way around the room. And what that allows you to do is use, for lack of a better word, it's kind of built on video game technology, but much more realistic. And it allows officers to go through what's called force on force training and go through some shoot versus no shoot scenarios. So it gives officers the ability to do different scenarios that can be changed on the fly by the administrator who is running the computer based on the officer's response. And then the officer has to decide whether that particular scenario requires a certain use of force, which isn't always lethal. It could be taser, it could be pepper spray, it could be a baton, or it could be the firearm, or no force at all. And so we demoed one that requires goggles. So instead of having a whole room set up, you put on a set of virtual reality goggles, and you have 360 degree action. So you're not just limited to that 270. It's very much like you're actually there. And it was absolutely phenomenal. We ran several officers through it. We ran Joel through it, and we were very impressed. So we're currently
Hold on. How did Joel do?
Maybe I'll let Joel answer that.
So I didn't actually participate in the use of the VR machine. I participated in the group that followed when an officer went through it, like, why did you do this at this step? What was your logic going to this point? What was the legal ramification if you'd have taken this action at this point? It was really, really useful. And it was really helpful for even the people not using the virtual reality system at the time to sit there and see what a different officer would do in that situation, and then explain their thought process. And then to get the feedback from myself or the chief or other officers is to know, or yes, this is why you should have done that or not done that. And to watch everyone in the room go, oh, that makes perfect sense. But it's mind blowing. And I would invite any members of the council who want to participate in it, just to watch, to not even like participate in it, just to see how many split-second decisions in about a 10-second situation goes through, and how many different legal analysis are happening simultaneously. It really shows you the challenge that these guys face every day and every night when they go out, because literally in a 10-second window, there's about 100 different things that they could do that open us up to just so much liability. And it's really important to get that training to limit and make sure that the community is getting that service and that level of policing that they deserve. And it really helps with that.
I love this. Keep going, Brett. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, it is an awesome product. And as far as use of force, the virtual reality use of force tools go, this one is quite affordable at $26,000. Most of them go for about $250,000. So we are looking for grants to fund it. We only had about a week with the unit, so we already had to send that back to the company, but we were all very thoroughly impressed with it. We are looking for grants. And it is one of those tools that a lot of agencies use these to show members of the community, sometimes media, sometimes council members, how difficult it can be to make those split-second decisions. And they'll put them into that situation and run them through and let them react and see how it works for them. So it's good on that kind of community level, but for us, it would be absolutely invaluable. So we're trying to find some grants for it, and then we hope to be able to get that up and running. So we'll see. Keep your fingers crossed on that. Speaking of grants, our office manager Kelly Day went to virtually attended a 2-day grant writing class earlier, I think it was last week, and was extremely excited, came back with lots of good ideas. She's been wanting to write grants, and in fact, she did write a grant for us last year for a community program that we'll be putting into place this year, and was successful in that. So we got about $4,500 to apply toward that program, which was fantastic. And so now that she's had a little bit of this training, she has a lot more resources and did some networking at it. So she's super excited to start looking for grants and seeing what we can come up with. We have already identified a couple that are, as grants go, relatively easy to apply for, one of which would be for a canine at the department, and another one would be to provide radar units for patrol vehicles. So we'll be digging into those in the near future. And then the last thing I wanted to focus on is I sent emails to council and to the mayor about some NAACP awards that our members were received. And then also Officer of the Year, Civilian Employee of the Year, and some of the other awards that we gave out in December to our members. And I want to publicly thank Councilwoman Drossary for sending cards to all of the officers and members who won an award. I've had multiple officers come up to me with their card, and they're like, "Did you see this? Did you see what I got? This is so awesome!" And they're really excited about it. It was a huge morale boost. It was a morale boost to receive the award, and then when they got the card from council member or Councilwoman Drossary, that it was just the icing on the cake. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, and all of our members appreciate the recognition.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm telling everybody to call me because my chicken scratch is bad and I can't read it half the time. But no,
We were
thank
all
you
able
all
to.
for your work. No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brad, quick question for you, if I may. I saw where there's a legislator trying to push a bill through the legislature right now that, if I understand it correctly, permits carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. How do you react to that as a police officer?
It's a good question. And years ago, we went through a similar experience where previously it had been illegal to carry a loaded firearm in a vehicle. And the legislature changed that to allow it. And, initially there was a little bit of uproar about it, but the reality is that somebody who's committing a crime with a firearm, or that involves a firearm, they're not usually the ones who we're concerned about. So, they're going to do what they want to do. My opinion, I don't really think has a whole lot of weight on the matter, but I don't really see it that significantly different from an open carry situation, which the state currently allows.
Thank you.
Brett, thank you so much. It's fun hearing about the VR training and all the work that you're doing. And I echo the gratitude to Ronnie for sending cards too. That is really sweet. And thank you for recognizing her, Chief.
Of course. Thank you.
No, I'm just going to say for the future, feel free to spend more time on the officers and not me.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thanks, Brett.
The last one we have tonight is for the local Bucks, and it's Summer and Lisa, and they have some exciting news to share about that. And also the grant program Lisa's going to talk about real quick as well.
And we can say bye to Brett, right? He can go have dinner and.
No, Mayor, I informed all department heads there would be a quiz on city council meeting tonight, tomorrow, and their jobs depended on their performance. So he may want to stick around.
We'll leave that up to you, Brett. Okay, Summer, Lisa, take it away.
Hi, everybody.
Hello again.
I want to announce that as of today, late today, the biological bucks have, whoops, hang on.
Hey, Lisa, you're really choppy. Do you want Summer to make this announcement? Okay,
Is that better? Am I back?
you are back.
Okay. So as of late today, the Buy Local Bucks program, we have expended all of the $100,000 that were allocated for that. We did notify the businesses that as of the end of business today, they should stop accepting bucks. And I have put out posts on social media, all of our social media, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as updating the website. And Summer, if you want to bring up the website, you can show folks what that looks like. I'm asking her to do that just because of my internet instability. And I'm going to let Summer talk about sort of how that happened, because as of yesterday, we were at about 88%. And then boom, all of a sudden today, we got a bunch more coupons in from businesses. So we are ending the program at this point. Businesses will be compensated for all of the bucks they've already collected, but we definitely, it has been a hugely successful program. I know that some people have already posted on social media, you know, wondering why they couldn't spend their bucks at the end of today. And I think we've been very clear about the fact that we allocated $100,000, the council did, and that was certainly not all of the value of the bucks that were sent out, but based on information from other cities who have done this, you know, not all of them are spent. So we tried to be as, you know, diplomatic as we could and as close as we could to what we did. So Summer, if you'll scroll down a little bit, they can see that we've updated the, we've added a new graphic here to update the website, and then the thermometer has been updated to illustrate that we have spent now a complete 100% of the bucks. This has been an amazingly fun program, and the community has responded in an incredibly positive way. And I just would like to say to the council, thank you so much for agreeing to let us do this. And it's been a pleasure to administer. So, you know, it's really nice to give something back to the community in a really concrete way that they can understand. So it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Mayor, can I make one quick comment in regard to this?
Absolutely.
I was going to do it during my bill paying, but this is probably much more appropriate. Just in this batch of bills that I went through this week, I just wanted to point out that City Market had cashed in $37,000, $37,905, and Village Market had cashed in $2,310. That's almost 40% of the entire program. What that tells me is that people were buying groceries with the biggest share of this. So other businesses cashed in quite a number, but what this tells me is that we helped our community just keep food on their tables. So I thought that was important to note, that that much of it just went to our grocery stores.
I appreciate you sharing that. It is really important data for us to look at, especially if we want to, you know, consider a program like this in the future, or other food, you know, purchasing programs.
Yeah, I think we got a really good sense of what people in our community needed. And it's really satisfying, I think, as a staff, and I'm sure as a council as well, to recognize that we were able to at least help some of them with those needs. So,
Well, in addition to those two businesses, Moonflower they've cashed in approximately 7,900, and Walker Drug actually offers groceries as well, and their totals are about 5,300. So I think it's very telling where the majority of the bucks were spent.
I'd be interested too if restaurants, if people saw this as an opportunity to,
We received quite a few from our local restaurants that are open at this point.
mhm.
And if I may, I'd like to just say a huge thank you to Summer and Carrie, because the process of redeeming the bucks and creating, purchase orders and writing checks and making sure that these businesses are paid in a timely manner has fallen on their shoulders, and they've been awesome. And Patrick and Rhett from the rec department were incredibly helpful with contacting the businesses to begin with. And then Pat has been following up and forwarding me, emails from people who said they didn't receive their bucks. And we have, over the last couple of weeks, because we did have some extras printed in case of that, provide those to folks. There were a few people who still hadn't picked them up at City Hall. And unfortunately now, the program has ended at this point. I mean, at some point, perhaps we'll be able to do this again. And I think it would be really amazing if we could.
Not only that, Mayor, I want to echo the thank you to staff for doing it, but Summer and Carrie devised the tracking system, and Lisa, and when she got them printed and would pass them out, they would put the address on every one of them. And Summer and Carrie not only logged them all, counting them, they logged every address that turned them in to make sure we weren't getting duplicates of people asking for them, saying that they had not received them. And we didn't have a single incident of someone trying to pass off more than they were allotted.
That's really great.
It's an amazing program. So I'm thrilled that we got to do it. And thank you so much, Mayor, for coming up with the idea.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
And that was, so Joel, when you told us about other communities doing this, and I think we had some statistics on how many coupons traditionally get turned in. And in some ways it seems like we threw that number, we blasted that out of the water. And so, obviously COVID is unusual times, and we live in a community where we could all use extra, cash, and especially for food right now. But do you think that was a contribution, or it would have been fast regardless?
I think one of the biggest differences that we had was the communities that we talked to who had done this program were large communities, some of them pushing almost 100,000 residents. And so I think a lot of people in those communities don't have the connection to their council and don't have the connection to what's going on at City Hall. They're just going about their day to day. And so they didn't know about the program. I think a lot of people see them and they just assume they're junk mail from a used car salesman, and they just threw them away. So I think the fact that we're just such a smaller community with the paper, and the word got out, and so many businesses were so great about it, and all of them got involved, that everyone just knew what it was. I don't think there was, I think there was some people who threw them away for sure, but I think people learned about the program, knew what they were watching for. Lisa did a great job getting it up on the webpage. The color patterns and the schemes all matched with the webpage to what we sent out. So people, if they got on the webpage, would identify the coupon as soon as they saw it, because the printing was all the same. And so I just think we did a really good job of marketing it, and the council has done a really good job of reaching out to their constituents and making sure people knew what was coming. And I think people were ready for it. And I think in those larger communities, I've worked at some of those larger communities, and there is a complete disconnect from City Hall and the community in those large communities. And that doesn't exist here. And I think that was a huge part of how come our program was so successful, was the ability to get the word out and people knew.
Thanks.
So if I might, I'd also like to say we did put this out on social media several times, but also the other communities we talked to did not allow grocery stores to participate. And that was partly because a lot of them are chains, and they really wanted to push the business to the local retailers. In our case, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, but we really were wanting to let people use the coupons where they most needed them.
Yeah, we had that conversation among staff several times, and the communities that we talked to that didn't allow grocery stores to participate, their argument, and valid, was that those businesses had not suffered throughout COVID. In fact, they probably had seen an increase, especially in the beginning when everyone was hoarding toilet paper and food and they couldn't keep items on shelves. They probably actually saw an increase to their business. And so we were trying to balance this. Do we let them participate even though they probably haven't seen a deficit to their bottom line, versus what do we think members of our community need? And if we send out this coupon program and they go buy food with it, that was a concern of ours. And for us and for our community, we decided that the access to the food was more important than who was winning as far as COVID purchases went.
And that our people are working at the grocery store and, supports.
And I think it's different here too, because the grocery stores, all three of them, all four of them, are such great members of our community and participate in so much of what we do. They're not just a Smith's with 4 locations inside of our boundary. I mean, City Market, Village Market, Moonflower, and Walker's all participate in local youth sports, and they do advertising. And so, they're members of our community. They're not just businesses here.
So, Lisa, are we contacting every business that was listed as an eligible business? Have they been directly contacted saying that it's over, like by email or phone?
Yes, we did that at about 4 o'clock this afternoon when we realized that everything was done. And I also have notified the local newspapers that I'll be sending out a press release later tonight or first thing in the morning, and in hopes that they would hold a little space so we could get the word out. So it's out in all the venues that we have, social media, the website, and it's going to be out to the newspapers before night is over. So.
And for those curious community members where the money was spent, are we going to be publishing a breakdown of what was spent where, or are we going to keep that?
It is absolutely public information. We could easily throw it up on a link to that webpage for Buy Local Bucks. Summer already has it generated. We can just put that page up there and people can click on it if they choose to.
Sure. And I could create like a chart, or we could just do a simple spreadsheet for that if you'd like. Absolutely. That's entirely up to y'all.
We were contacted.
Like we might have that curiosity. So.
Okay.
And
We'll take care of that tomorrow.
Thank you.
By other members of the community, some of the chamber and tourist groups, and there was interest in trying to do this program later in the fall again, if we could, maybe trying to do it into November, December, to try and encourage some of the businesses that close for the winter to maybe try and stay open. Now, I think if we do something like that, that's a later discussion at a later time, but we definitely would want to reevaluate who gets to participate and how we target that money to those industries, if that's what we're trying to do. So something to think about going forward.
Definitely an economic development tool for consideration. All right. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for sticking around to join us for that update. And that's the last update from administrative reports. Is there anything else, Joel?
Yeah, let's let Lisa talk about the grant program real quick.
Oh, I apologize. That's right.
No worries. It'll just take a second. So the final applications for the City of Moab one-time grant program are due Friday at 5 o'clock this week. And the committee, which there are 5 people on the committee, the committee is meeting on Tuesday, at 4 o'clock to go over those applications.
Can you share the names of the committee members, please?
Yes, I'm on the committee. Carly Castle is on the committee. Kelly McEnany is on the committee, who's our new administrative assistant. Danny Guerrero is on there, and so is Mark Jollisaint from the engineering department. So we have a variety of folks, and we are going to meet on Tuesday at 4 to go over those applications. As of about 5 o'clock today, I believe we had 11 applications so far, and I would just encourage nonprofit groups or certain governmental agencies that were impacted by COVID to check out our website at moabcity.org/grants 2021. And the guidelines are there and the application is also there. And, we're taking them until 5 o'clock Friday. So anybody who's interested can submit. We have $100,000, I believe, set aside for that program. And I couldn't tell you at this point how much has been requested, but, we'll be evaluating things based on the money available and also the programs and, with the governmental entities, the impact that they had from COVID and the needs that they have as well.
Would our schools be eligible? Oh gosh, sorry. Would the schools be eligible to apply? I don't know that we've specified
Yes,
that or reached out to them.
Yeah, yes, they are, as a matter of fact.
We say that again.
Yes, they are eligible to apply.
Okay. That's helpful. And then is there like a maximum grant amount?
No, at this point, when people have asked, we've basically responded that they should ask for how much they need, and then the committee will evaluate it based on the number of applications and the amount of money that we have available at this time.
Great. Any questions from the council? Thank you, Lisa, and thanks to the committee for working through those applications. I think that's actually a pretty cool group.
Yeah,
Different
it
groups
is.
coming together to evaluate the grants.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, Joel,
That's
anything
it.
else?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, we are now at section 4, mayor and council reports. At 7:48, so we'll move through this. So 2 weeks ago, I met with Kent Green and Bruce Huntington. He's from a UTV group, and we had a very cordial meeting. I shared a lot of the sentiment that I have received from comments within the community, concerns about some of the actions that we've taken, but the overwhelming support, as we heard tonight, for citizens to be heard. I did confirm with the two of them that they felt that the reduction in speed limit was definitely a strong way to mitigate noise, and that they supported it, with the caveat of if it's legal. And then just last week, we saw the Rally on the Rocks, of which Bruce is a member, sending the letter to us with the legal concerns. I am hopeful. I've been meeting with a lot of UTV enthusiasts, leaders of different organizations. I met with Ben Burr, the Blue Ribbon Coalition's director, last year. And with every meeting, I continue to say, look, I appreciate suggestions for noise mitigation. And I very much appreciate, the ideas, the thoughtful ideas of how we can work together. But when we try to act on those suggestions in the form of, codifying those suggestions as policy, like we just did with speed limit, and then we get railed for it, it puts us in a very difficult place. So suggesting people go slower to reduce noise versus putting up a reduction in speed limit, a speed limit sign that, helps us, and our officers with enforcement of their suggestion. Well, I guess I would think that that would be something they could support. I'm just finding suggestions from the UTV community, but not if we act on those suggestions. So I want to just make a plea that for those that are UTV, ATV recreationists, business owners, we are looking for compromise. We're looking for solutions that we can act upon. We did so with the speed limit, but we're looking for those suggestions to be something we can run with and then not have to continue to defend. So I just wanted to share that I did have that meeting, but then seeing that letter the week later just made me feel in the same way that I have felt in meeting with enthusiasts in the past, that that suggestions only go so far. And there has to be a true compromise where we're able to comfortably codify those suggestions without repercussions. I also met with a gentleman named Jacob who the Salt Lake Air Protectors organization, they are planning, hoping to plan a powwow here in September, bring the Native community together, but also the Moab community and visitors alike to come together in a powwow. I wanted to put it on your radar because I think it's something that would be very, very healing for our community and something that I'd like to support. It's going to come to this council in the form of a waiver potentially for the event and the use of a park probably. So it's something I do support, and I do hope that we can support them in their event. I met with the BLM state director and the county. The county, actually, Chair McGann invited me to the meeting with the BLM state director. We had a great conversation and a very frank conversation about OHVs, the noise, the enforcement, all things OHVs. So I just wanted to report that back to all of you because I know we've had conversations like we really need to be talking too. And I just wanted to share that we are having those conversations. And so it was very helpful for him to hear also just the intersection that OHV noise is not just, and user conflict is not just an issue on our public lands, but it's an issue within our municipality. That was very helpful for him to hear that perspective. What else? I mean, then the rest of the last 2 weeks have been filled with LPC meeting and the League of Cities and Towns as board meetings and being on touch of all things legislative. Housing has been something that I've been participating in, although it's not directly city, but then also of course, the OHV legislation. And I just want to thank Ronnie and Kaylin for being part of our legislative huddle and staff and other partners that we've been bringing together to really discuss bills as they come up and creating strategy on how we can align what we've all talked about as a council and where we can send our support. So I just want to extend the invitation to council members. If there's a bill that pops up that is of interest, just like Mike had a bill of interest that he sent to me, and we quickly, we met as a legislative huddle and quickly turned around, are turning around a letter of support for a bill. So I just want to encourage council members to use that mechanism. And I don't know that we're going to go into detail about any particular legislation tonight. We don't really have it on our agenda. So and I don't think we have to, but yes, please do reach out to any one of us if there's a bill of concern that we want to be following. And that's it from me. Ronnie.
Okay, I'll try to be fast. There were several meetings. Today we had our quarterly Moab Tailings Project Steering Committee meeting, sorry. And I wanted to give you a few updates. So we have moved, or the project has moved, about 11.2 tons of tailings out of the 16 million. So that puts us at the 70% mark. And just some interesting things they've been able to pull off. I think the federal cleanup director we have, Russell McAllister, as I've said before, is quite amazing in his ability to find added efficiencies for the project. So we saw in the first months of fiscal year 21, which is actually October through December of 2020, that they managed to move about 10% more tailings than the monthly average in the fiscal year 20. Let's see. We also got good news about funding because last year we asked for more than $45 million to at least help with inflation, and that did go into the president's budget. But then when we went into the continuing resolution, we were thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe it's just going to stay at 45 million. Well, in the end, we did get 47.8 million, which is great. It allows those 4 trains a week to continue. But we did ask the cleanup director what we thought that added funding could be used for. And I guess due to COVID, people aren't traveling. So a lot of staff at the project are interested in extra shifts and just working more. So he is thinking that most likely we could use that to do some extra trains on some holidays and maybe even some Fridays and Saturdays. So it's not set in stone, but that might be what it gets used for. We did spend some time today discussing just over time. There have been suggestions that to save some money and from lessons learned they've had about the eventual covers that go on site. So the cover that we'll have at Crescent Junction, before they had been talking about an armored rock cover. But now the thinking is they've learned some lessons about those in other places, and that you could probably save $27 million and have an even more efficient cover in terms of keeping moisture out by using what they call an evapotranspiration cover. So that's kind of exciting. They'll be able to use more material that's actually on site, and that's where a lot of your saving comes in on funds. But anyway, they're looking into all of that. And let's just see, we did have a separate meeting, smaller UMTRA meeting on January 14th, just to begin having discussions about site closure. Once the tailings are moved, what starts to happen. And so that has to do with everything from getting the site ready, deciding what things that are on the site might still stay. Like the project director has said, you know, there is some infrastructure here and we just don't know if the next person might want it. So those decisions have to be made. And then starting to have those discussions about how one even negotiates transfer of land. So that was that. I did have a Systems of Care, a regional advisory council for Grand County and San Juan County the other day. And I think the main takeaway that's important to pass on there, and just to remind people, System of Care has a wraparound program, or I guess they call it I'm just going to read their own writing because otherwise I'll botch it, but a customized service approach that basically helps keep families safely together while effectively helping children with emotional and or behavioral needs thrive in their own homes, schools, and communities. So basically, when a child is having a problem, they can really bring together a team of people to help that child stay in the home, in the community. A lot of studies show that is just so much better for everybody in the long run. So anyway, the news on that one is they definitely have capacity right now to help more families. So anything any of us can do to steer more families who might benefit to the local System of Care staff person, Becky Hinchcliffe, is great. We had an EMS meeting on January 19th. And I guess the main things to just pass on there was this January was looking as busy as last January, which was our busiest. I think by January 19th, they'd already have 52 incidents and 8 in one day on the 17th of January. And I think that included 2 gunshots. So boy, nothing like a busy day. 87% of the EMS staff had gotten their first COVID vaccine by the 19th of January. They're moving ahead with the building up on the hill there. I know they've been doing some last minute stuff with the city to get their final building permit. And sometime when there's more time, there is some exciting stuff going on with community paramedics with Dr. Mack at the hospital. And I don't know that you really have to hear the rest of this. And then, yeah, just thanks again to the mayor and the legislative group at the city, which is the mayor and Kaylin and I and Lori Simonson and Carly Castle and Joel Linares, because that's been very helpful to just be able to discuss a few bills and understand things a bit better. So we could spend all night discussing bills, but we'll spare you. That's it for me.
Thanks, Ronnie. Quick question, UMTRA. I was asked about what will it be? Kind of a map out of what we might expect to see the site look like after remediation, because we're actually pretty close to, you know, where we would be for the planning process. So is it finalized what will happen there, or is it conceptualized?
Yeah, it's just a concept because when they put together this steering committee with community members, they wrote into those plans to come up with a community vision every 5 years. So the last one that was done came out and was approved by the city and county in 2018, but another one would be due in 2023. And it's really when you get closer. So anybody can go go online and see the community vision. And I recommend you don't just look at the map, but there's actually like I can't remember if it's a 12-page document that goes with that explains all the elements, because no one is really sure how the site's going to end up. You know, is it going to be flat? Is it going to be sloped? Is it going to, you know, because of groundwater remediation is going to have a big dip, you know, in it. So we can't really know how it's going to end up, and Department of Energy and Legacy Management would have to have a say in what state it's in and what could actually be there. The sense for a long time has been,
you probably couldn't have housing there. You wouldn't want housing there. You might be able to have some commercial, but a lot of stuff that was in that community vision the last time was outdoor space. Outdoor space to recreate in, a potential event center and historic recognition of the mining industry, and then potentially with some commercial space, but focused a lot on local residents. So anybody can go and look at that most recent one, but the idea was that that would be updated as we got closer and we knew more. So it's kind of it's a gradual process.
Website, where would somebody go? What was
let me pull it up.
like
Go to the next person and I'll wave at you when I have it for you.
Sounds good. Okay, Mike, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. There are two positions open on the city's water advisory board. For those of you out there in our 1,000-fold listening audience, consider that. It's a great group. Emily and Carly, thank you guys both so much for reworking the letter about HB 144. It did vast improvements. And thanks to Dana Van Horn for lightening me to that one as well.
Hey, thanks to you for the draft.
Oh, sure, no problem. Mark Stilson, the Southeast Utah Division of Water Rights engineer. He's been getting his ducks together for a water, in the wetlands. He's concerned about brine. The latest USGS work showed that there's a layer of briny water from old salt formations way back. And he's worried about them getting mixed up with a thinner layer of fresh water on top, from which city and the city not so much, but the world of private wells and some county wells as well draw their water from. So one of the conditions of safe yield is that you can't damage the quality of another aquifer. So he's all interested in that, and he will be asking for some city funding support, as I've said before. And keeping it real short, Brett, I want to, you'll be interested in this one, not exactly an apology, but I have learned something. I've maintained that the 1 over R squared law that one of our earlier listeners, citizens to be heard, said was so straightforward. Well, actually, I did some experiments in my garage, of all things, with my little noise meter, and there are reflections from a vehicle and down to the ground, down where the meter is, and you get out beyond about 6 or 8 feet, and those reflections get in the way. It doesn't follow 1 over R squared anymore. So it does get a little more complicated, and I kind of alluded to that in some of the letters I wrote to Laurie and some other folks about complications in trying to do pass-by testing. So, so there's that. Finally, water again, Grand County's GWSSA. With the dry summer last year and the pretty dry, of course, we got a little bit of snow here lately. They're already worried about trying to keep the irrigation folks happy all the way through this coming summer, and they're already trying to acquire some additional water rights and uses of some other wells, expecting they're going to have to suck more water out of the ground to make up for water that won't make it into Kinsley because the snowpack is so low, or has been so far anyway. And the whole thing kind of reminded me of, you guys may remember 3 or 4 years ago when California had a severe drought going on, and they were pumping the daylights out of the groundwater there. So that's the situation that the county is finding themselves in. I guess I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's
Mayor, did you want that website?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if people prefer me to read the URL, or I can just tell you, if you go to the county site and you drop down under county departments, there is actually a Moab UMTRA project line, and you can just click on that, and then you'll see the vision listed under the Site Features Committee section. Or if you really like URLs, I can tell you.
No, that's going to be too long. Thank you. No, the direction of how to get there is much better. Thanks, Ronnie. And thanks, Mike, for your report. Yeah, that's a good segue for our later conversation of all things water. So, okay, next is Tani.
Thank you. Okay, last week on the 14th, is that last week or the week before? 2 weeks ago, I guess, almost. I went to a Canyonlands Care Center Special Service District meeting, And I think the most impressive thing that we were told that night was that even though there have been several employees of the care center who have tested positive for COVID at several different times, they have caught every single one of those cases, and not one of our long-term care residents has tested positive. We are one of 3 long-term care centers in the state that have had no COVID. And being attached to the hospital further complicates that. So our long-term care staff really, really deserves kudos for keeping our frail and our fragile residents healthy. They've done a yeoman's work in keeping their spirits up. They had soup tasting last week. They've made muffins. They've played bingo. They sing, and they have done a great job of keeping them all safe. The care center was originally scheduled to have Walgreens come in and do a clinic January 30th and February 20th. And Walgreens was going to be in the facility the entire day, 8 hours. Something happened, and the local health department had some extra doses. They got them to the care center. The nurses vaccinated the entire staff and all of the staff that wanted to be vaccinated, and all but one of the residents in an hour. So if you want something done, give the nurse a job. And during what the maintenance man's routines, he found the original ribbon cutting for the care center, and January 28th, 2011 was the date that it officially opened. So it's been there 10 years, and they are going to have a bit of a celebration. And another important statistic is in 2019, the care center had 15 workman's comp related injuries. And in 2020, given all of the other challenges, they had 4. So they vastly improved their worker safety. I also was at a HASU board meeting. There was always the budget and always the financials that we go through. I think something that's pretty interesting is that, let me see if I can find it. In discussions with Arroyo Crossing, the Housing Authority is going to submit to do 12 cottages. These are not tiny homes, but they are considered, they're cottages, 600 to 800 square feet, and they will be 2 bedrooms. That should be in the April round. And I have photos. They look like this. So I thought that was interesting for people that probably, or would be happier with maybe a non-traditional housing unit.
You said 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 to 800 square feet?
Yes, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 to 800 square feet.
Yeah.
I'm not good at visual aids. The MAPS project is entirely full. The Virginian apartment is entirely full, as is Cinema Court, and they all have waiting lists. So housing is definitely needed within our community, and any way that we can get that accomplished and keep it affordable is very important. And I also went to a museum meeting. That meeting was basically an outline of the museum's goals for this year and what they want to accomplish. The COVID has derailed a lot of plans, but it's also given the museum and staff extra time to take in comments from the community and improve the exhibits that we have and create better, more descriptive placards and information that goes along with it. They've been able to develop the website and the interactive exhibits that they have. They're also going to work on their membership drive this year. If you are interested in being a trustee at the museum, or if you want to just be a member of the museum, there are some good benefits that go along with it. And I just got before the meeting, and so I just kind of skimmed it. And I will forward the email onto all of you so that you can share it with members of the public. There will be a book sale. Some of the books that have been donated to the museum, they're just an overwhelming amount. So they have gone through those and will be selling those. And like I said, I skimmed the email, and so I don't even know the date. Let me just forward you that email and you can share it with whoever you see fit. And I do believe that is it for me.
Thanks, Tawny. Karen.
Okay, thank you. So this last 2 weeks, I haven't had any meetings, and I actually went back home to help family with the family emergency. But I just want to let you guys know that the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments has launched a small business recovery grant program in response to COVID-19. And funding for this program is provided through the State of Utah Small Cities, the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. Funding is available right now between $5,000 and $25,000, and you can get more information if you are a small business through SEUALG, so SEUALG.utah.gov, and you can apply there. And it's a great opportunity for businesses who suffered this last spring and summer. And that is all I have.
Thank you for sharing that, Grant. Sometimes when you sit on a board, you forget all the details, but that is a grant that we were able to do. And it is a really difficult acronym name. That's why I just said,
I don't know what it is difficult. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, 3 years ago when I joined the board, I suggested we come up with a different name, but we're still stuck with SEUALG. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, though. I appreciate that, and I know that it's been out in different channels, so I appreciate that that's on your radar. Okay, thank you so much. And Kaylin.
Other than the legislative huddle, my only meeting has been the Solid Waste Special Service District. We reviewed the last year's waste statistics, and paralleling our sales tax, municipal solid waste deliveries to Klondike were down in the spring, but then rebounded to month-to-month historic highs in the rest of the year, which is good for district income, since that's one of our most profitable or least non-profitable facilities. But it means that we're not necessarily making that much progress towards zero waste and diversion efforts. So mixed bag there. And we are going to be rolling out a sponsorship program for the Canyonlands Recycling Center. As all of you will recall, it's a source-separated recycling center that is loved by some members of our community, but it does not pay for itself. It is free, unlike the city single stream with pickup service. And so in an effort to close the gap between the costs and the revenues, we're going to have a sponsorship program, which is entirely voluntary. Everyone is free to continue using the recycling center with or without sponsoring it, but there will be a variety of tiers for both residential and commercial customers, with few little perks, and there is not a URL available for that yet, but staff are putting together the page and the sign up forms. So I'll let you all know when that is available. That's what I've got.
That's a great idea, sponsorship. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I got a question for you, if I may.
Yes, absolutely. Mike.
In the year or two now, it's been since we started the single stream recycling program. And you may remember it was not mandatory that you participate in it. And I'm sure a certain fraction of residents, I'll just talk about residents for the moment, signed up right on the get-go, and then there's been an opportunity or two to change your mind. But how's that holding up the popularity of the program? Do you have any idea? Are more people signed up single stream, or have more people dropped out? How's that worked out?
I can't answer that. I was meaning to pull together some of I have raw data on the district's recycling versus relative to the solid waste, and Monument Waste recently sent out their report. And I was meaning to collate that into some bite-sized statistics, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But Joel might be able to just give you the information on the signups for the city.
I can absolutely have Marcy pull that tomorrow morning in our department meeting, and I will get that information to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, council members, for your work over the last 2 weeks. We are now moving along on our agenda. We are at section 5, presentation summer. If you would be so kind to bring in, I believe it's Amanda from the Grand County School District to provide us with a 10-minute update.
Joining shortly.
Thank you so much. There you are. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was listening to it on my cell phone and it's a little delayed. I was like, oh gosh, why is this happening? Okay, sorry. Thank you, everyone. I do want to apologize for the last meeting. I did come down with COVID myself, and so I was hoping that I could log on during that, but I couldn't. So thank you for understanding and allowing me to do this. And also thank you just for letting the school district have this opportunity. I reached out and just asked if maybe we could do this quarterly, just to give some updates, and so that we had some scheduled time where the city and the school district could talk and communicate and just, you know, see what's going on. So thank you so much. I did send over to Summer kind of late this afternoon, just a 1-pager that I put together. So I'm not sure if you guys were able to get that before the meeting or not. Great, thank you. Thank you, Summer, so much for that. We've had a couple of changes this school year. I know we're well into the school year, but I thought we'd just, you know, point this out, that the superintendent's brand new, our business administrator is brand new. Pat Wilson, he's the only one that came from out of town, actually. He was a business administrator for a really long time with Sevier School District, and he retired, came out of retirement just for us. So it's been great having him on board. He's doing a fabulous job. And then Jill Tatton is now the new principal HMK. Kari is the principal at the middle school. I'm not sure if everybody saw, though, it was voted on the last board meeting that the new middle school will be called the Margaret L. Hopkin Middle School. And so that was voted on at the board meeting last week, and it was very well supported by the community. The board members actually said that was the most emails they've gotten about a topic. So everyone was, it's going to be great. And then Dr. Mary Marable is the principal at the high school, and then Sherry Buckingham actually is. She's still there, so that's awesome. And then we did have 2 new board members that joined that were sworn in January. So that's Steve Kennedy and Ariel Atkins. And then Kathy Williams is now the new vice president for our board. So just a little update on that if you guys weren't aware of that already. I thought since this was the first meeting, we could I could just inform you on some basic statistics that we have going on here. So our employee stats right now are 122 certified employees. So that's teachers and therapists and counselors, 121 classified right now. We have 13 beacon staff and 3 mentoring staff. And then by the numbers, you guys know we have 3 schools and 1 preschool. I don't know, I think we always forget about the preschool sometimes. Our current enrollments, this is November data, is 1363, so down just a little bit. pre-Ks at 39. They are down a little bit. They kept their enrollment low because of COVID this year at the preschool. On a daily basis, I just thought this was interesting. We transport around 850 students this year. It's usually up a little bit higher than that, but due to COVID, some people chose not to use their transportation. And then this year, around 966 meals are served on a daily basis. So that includes lunch and breakfast. That's how many kids are eating on a daily basis at the schools. There are 3 community councils within the schools. And currently right now at all 3 schools, there's 18 parents that are involved in that. And then the expenses down below, that's just from our audit last school year. And so that's just telling you where our revenues come from and then the percentage of our expenses and where those are going for you guys. So just a quick one pager of just some basic information in case you guys weren't aware. And then I did want to give a vaccination update actually for the school district. So as of today, there was a big vaccination party at the elementary school this afternoon. So all of our staff have now actually been offered the vaccination and has gotten it if they chose to do that. I'm pretty sure our nurse Mary Frothingham will have some updated numbers for us tomorrow. But our goal was to have at least 80% of our staff receive the vaccination. We last week were about at 10% who said they absolutely didn't want it, and then about 9% that said they were unsure. And then just a quick update on the middle school opening. So we have April 5th is the date that we're shooting to open the middle school. And so hoping that the week before is spring break. And so we'll be moving out of the old school into the new school the last week of March. We will be having some type of small ribbon cutting ceremony. And so all of you will be invited. And then I think in the fall, we'll have a bigger event once we're in there. And I think that's it. I think that's all that I had today. But I just wanted to encourage you all to, reach out to the superintendent or myself or any of the board members if you guys have any questions or concerns, or if you want updates on anything. If you have questions about programs that you hear that's going on, or if you just want to tour any of our programs or any other information. I guess I didn't introduce myself. I'm so sorry. I'm Amanda Nillen, actually the community coordinator. And so I took over for Mallory last year. And so this is actually in the second year that the school district has had this position. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Amanda, I was just curious, how many students have you have not returned back to school because of COVID and are doing homeschooling?
That is a great question. So at the beginning of the year, we had a lot. We were down actually quite a bit. I don't have those numbers with me right now, but progressively now everybody's been coming back slowly from homeschooling and or from online. So we actually gave everybody an online option as well at all the schools and at all the grades in the elementary. The high school after the first term decided not to do it online at all. They already had an online option that students could do. It's called Ingenuity. And so we were offering a new streaming option live from the classrooms. And not very many students were taking advantage of it. And the ones who weren't participating, no matter how much communication was going back and forth. And so they were failing those classes. So we actually asked them to come back, in which they all did. And then so the middle school actually does still have the streaming option. I think they have their other numbers. I think they had like 20 kids still doing that. And then the elementary school is, most of those kids came back actually from streaming and from homeschool. I actually just asked Miss Superintendent today, and I think our enrollment is down about 70 students right now. So that we actually were able to gain back a lot of homeschool students, and a lot of students that were streaming decided to come back in person.
And then I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but do you happen to know out of like the 900 meals that you are serving to students, I mean, how many are on free and reduced lunch?
So that is that's a good question. So I believe that data is collected as of October 31st every year. And so that's kind of like the date that the state and the federal government use. And so on that date, we were at, I believe we got to 49%. 50% is like the number that we want to get to, because once you get 50% or above, your district has more opportunities for more funding, especially around Title I and any other special programs that they want, because then you have a high need community. We know though, based on other numbers and factors, that it is actually above 50%. It's just getting those parents to fill out the applications, because they actually have to physically fill out application. Sometimes is a struggle, but we're so close to that number. But this school year, I don't know if you all are aware, but the federal government decided to extend what they call the seamless summer program. And so all students in the state, actually in the country, get free breakfast and lunch. It was up until December, but then they decided to extend it. So the rest of the school year, all the students get free lunch and breakfast.
So regardless if they apply, they don't have to apply for anything, that they just, that's qualify for that. That's great.
Yep. Every student, they can just come through whenever they want and get it. Yeah, it's been a great program.
Amanda, thank you so much for this presentation.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good night.
So we'll see you then in 3 months, correct?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, and if you guys have anything that comes up, like, when it gets closer, if you have any questions that you specifically want me to answer during the meeting, just let me know.
Sounds great. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for joining us. And we will move on to the next presentation, agenda item number 5.2, USU Extension, Dr. Roz McCann.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for sharing your screen so quickly.
Of course. I do this a lot at work. So for those of you unfamiliar, I'm Roz McCann. I work at USU in Environment and Society, and as a sustainable community specialist, most of my programming is statewide or national, but being here in Moab, of course, I feel passionate about the community and have organized a few community initiatives, including the Bee Inspired Gardens Initiative, the USU Moab Permaculture Initiative. So that's part of the main campus permaculture initiative, but we have a branch down here as well. And I was told by Emily that the theme of the year for council is water. And so I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about water and set my timer so I don't go too
well. And I might add too that it's worth noting that we were able to pass the plastic bag ban thanks to the research and data that you presented to us and the partnership between us and you. So thank you very much for that as well.
Of course, yeah, and happy to serve as a resource. And part of the impetus behind the presentation is not only to show some of the ways I could help as you're thinking about water from the council angle, but also potential to partner with the new sustainability director when they come on board. So what I'm hoping in the next few minutes to go over is the context behind water. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We're all familiar that we're in a water crisis in the Southwest and projected to get worse, but just provide a brief context and then talk briefly about Utah's stormwater codes. Don't worry, it's late at night. We're not going to spend too much time talking about the policy angle with the actual codes themselves, but I do want to show that there was an update that happened recently to the stormwater code, and then some helpful ordinances from other areas that might assist the city as they're thinking about water in the next coming year, and then a couple of case studies from the community that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So let me dive in and just first of all, switch from water to energy and just say thank you to all of you on the council who helped my master's student. She has now published the research in international journal and is about to publish another part of her research in a different journal. But this is a snippet from the article on community engagement strategies to achieve 100% net renewable electricity resolutions. And so with that, I'll just read a little bit from the abstract about what she wrote about. But and just for context for everyone, I'm seeing my internet's unstable. If I go out, just let me know. So she interviewed a handful of people on council, and I believe Emily as well. Is that so? I actually shouldn't point out exactly who, but she interviewed council members across Utah who are in communities that engage in 100% net renewable electricity resolutions. And I won't give away any of the specific things that were mentioned in the interviews, but she wrote about the absence of federal action on climate change and how that's motivating local communities to spearhead these efforts and the ripple effect that's having to really get other communities motivated to engage in a similar initiative. And so as of 2020, more than 150 cities, counties, and states have committed to such resolutions, and Moab is part of that wave. So really proud that the community signed on to that. And so signing on to these resolutions requires hurdling many significant obstacles, including developing and procuring sufficient renewable electricity resolutions from local utilities, navigating complex energy regulations, balancing costs with other community priorities, and convincing local citizens of the merits of renewable energy and efficiency for their homes and businesses. And so this article really highlights the strategies that were used in the communities, including Moab, to get us to the point of actually signing that resolution. And so she conducted the semi-structured interviews with representatives from Salt Lake, Park City, and Moab, the first 3 cities to engage in this type of a resolution, and provides an overview of the most significant outcomes so far, which is the passage of the Community Renewable Energy Act of 2019. That act was really incredible, and over 20 communities in Utah ended up signing on to 100% renewable. And it's just been great to see this wave rolling through the state to move away from fossil fuel electricity. And so she tied this in with frameworks of collaborative and transformational leadership. And I shared a link with the council from that research. So thank you all for your help with that, and happy to see that collaboration work out with one of my master's students. So back to the context now, switching from energy to water, which I'll spend the last 5 or 6 minutes talking about. But so we've had a hot year. This was the hottest summer on record, and we're projected to get hotter and drier in the Southwest, which I'm sure you're familiar with. In 2020, this article went around our academic circles from the Washington Post, and it's about the giant climate hotspot that's robbing the West of its water. And that giant climate hotspot, if you can guess, is us. And so here's the United States and the areas in the United States that have already warmed over 2 degrees Celsius. So that blob that you see there, if we zoom in, is Moab Grand Junction area. And so we're getting hot and drier than we already are. And so with that, just the cluster of counties in the Colorado's western slope, along with 3 counties just across the border, which is including ours, have warmed more than 2 degrees, double the global average, and spanning more than 30,000 square miles. It's the largest 2 degrees hotspot in the lower 40, as you can see on that map. And so that warming is associated as well with the Colorado River. And what we're seeing with the river is that it's in a state of aridification, and the flows declined nearly 20% over the past century, half of which is because of warming temperatures. And so they no longer calling it a drought. It's now in a state of aridification or mega drought. Some people are still referring to it as. And Brad Udall, senior water and climate research scientist, many of you have probably seen him present before. He's with Colorado State University. He said the basin has really entered into a fundamentally different period than what we experienced during the 20th century. So it's not a conversation about going back, but where can we take it from here, knowing that that's happening. So with all that context in mind, we have to ask ourselves, are we treating rainwater as a resource or as a nuisance? Well, culturally, we, our majority European roots of our culture value Kentucky bluegrass lawns, which stem from European aristocracy and a sign of prestige. The first lawns were around French castles in Europe. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, that's the way we are designing our landscapes. And so we see many examples of water being pushed away as quickly as possible as a nuisance. And so There's different ways we can design our landscapes, and Brad Lancaster has some great visuals of that. So here's a pre-post of a landscape. And if we redesign thinking about water as a resource instead of a nuisance, we go from pushing that water away, which you see on the one image, to the next image of paths are high and dry, basins are low and wet, and we're directing that water into a tank system. So in 2013, the House Bill 36 really allowed people to harvest up to 2,500 gallons in above or below ground tanks. And so that's great. It's one of our more progressive policies that we have. It's more progressive than Colorado. And I always make that comment that we have a policy that's more progressive than over in Colorado. And so here's another example of pre and then post if we think about redesigning our landscapes. And with that, you know, when we think about policy, it's a really interesting paradigm shift to start thinking about, do our policies support or prohibit this type of landscaping and green infrastructure in general? And we have some great policies that have emerged of late, and I think a combination of continuing with progressive policies for allowing stormwater runoff to run into landscapes, and also active harvesting of rainwater and graywater systems can really help us when it comes to thinking about that Colorado River and the aridification happening, and also our 9.5 inches of rain we have here each year. And let me just see here. Oh, I got a couple minutes. So with Utah's, so thinking about the policies and the progressiveness that I mentioned, effective March 1st, 2020, a new permit came out requiring that new development or redevelopment projects distribute greater than or equal to one, or that disturb, sorry, greater than or equal to 1 acre, including projects less than 1 acre that are part of a larger common plan of development or sale, to manage rainfall on site and prevent the off-site discharge of the precip from all rainfall events less than or equal to the 90th percentile rainfall event. And so what really stood out to me from this is this permit requirement is to be accomplished through the use of low impact development and green infrastructure practices designed, constructed, and maintained to infiltrate, evapotranspire, and or harvest and reuse rainwater. And so in the state of Utah, there's some great ordinances that already exist. And Moab's ordinance has within that parking lots shall incorporate methods of stormwater management using low impact development techniques, including, but not limited to, end of island bioretention cells with under drains and landscaping, bioretention cells or biofiltration swales located around the parking perimeter, breached curb drainage inlets or curb cuts in the end of island bioretention cells and bioretention strips to collect runoff, and or bioretention cells installed between lines of parking stalls and to increase the total treatment surface area of these systems. I was really happy to see that, especially the curb cuts within the code in Moab. Tucson has a really progressive green streets policy that I shared with the council that is great. It incentivizes people for engaging in this type of work and requires that all new publicly funded roadway development and redevelopment projects integrate infrastructure to capture the first ½ inch of rain, and that the project meets a 25% tree canopy cover and a 25% shrub and grass cover. So they're really incorporating this from a systems thinking level, how to shade the streets, provide a cooling effect, and infiltrate that water that runoff to run into those basins. In Portland, they have a green infrastructure policy, not surprising, very progressive, bringing nature into the city and providing money to engage in these initiatives as well. And that includes curb cuts, street swales, et cetera, in the code. So in USU Moab, we addressed a public safety concern by taking the roof runoff that was going across the parking lot and freezing in the winter and running it into these basins. We created paradise and took out a parking lot, I like to say, and here's how it is progressing over time. And so that landscape now is producing food that we donate to the Moab Valley Multicultural Center. And all of our harvest this year that wasn't eaten by our permaculture intern went to the Moab Valley Multicultural Center or to the Episcopal Church for the families in need. And in this small urban garden and our curb cuts and the back permaculture garden at USU Moab, we've calculated that over 125,000 gallons of water are harvested annually with only 9 inches of rain a year, because we have a lot of roof surface and a small amount of gardens that are really soaking that in with a heavy mulch layer. Fly through a couple of photos and then I'll wrap up. These are the curb cuts at USU Moab on the right, and then the ones on the left are with Brad Lancaster's property in Tucson, Arizona. Just showing some examples of how this could work. And those trees are a lot bigger now in the last couple of years, and they're entirely rainwater fed, even in dry periods in those center basins. Our tanks at USU Moab harvest 3,000 gallons. They're connected with an underground pipe, and we use that to supplementally water our gardens. A couple other examples around Moab. So this was a Kentucky bluegrass space, and now the teachers at the charter school use this space to help kids calm down when they've had a fight, and we're growing food in that garden and taking rainwater harvest from the buildings into indented swales with paths high and dry. Community garden as well, and this is Jeff photo credit with Terra Sophia, and Jeff's work as well with the Moab Arts and Rec Center with the city. So really incorporating wise design when it comes to handling water runoff as a resource from the mark.
Hey, pause right there. Go back just real quick, since it's city property. And I don't know if you can see it, but how the water enters that basin.
Yeah, so where that heavy pool, you can see that doesn't have mulch floating at the top, that's water flowing in a rain event. It's pushing the mulch to the far end of the basin, but that water flowing in where that muddy type water is in the upper part of that left picture, that is coming in an underground pipe that goes under that sidewalk. And so that building runoff then runs in through a gutter, through the pipe, and then out into that basin. So thank you, everyone. I'm really excited for the new sustainability director and happy to partner with them on water issues, but also just sustainability as a whole. My research right now is centering around permaculture design as a climate change adaptation and mitigation framework. And I think it'd be really great to think about Project Drawdown as a baseline when it comes to solutions for climate change. They have the most globally recognized solutions for climate change, the 100 top solutions when it comes to drawing down greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, and looking at where are we at with the city right now with sustainability, and where do we need to go to draw down our carbon and get to a point where we are more sustainable as a city, and also achieving the 100% net renewable electricity resolution goals. I'll stop there. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Roz, thank you so much.
Happy to present. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for the offer. Council, questions for Roz at this time? There's a lot to digest, and I just want to say thank you for your offer and working with the city, not only on the, as we search for a sustainability director, but also just the ongoing research and support that you're able to provide us so that we can really be forward thinking in our policy decisions. And so it's time to take some action, and I always say, like, fact-based decision making is the best. And so we really value the partnership with you and USU. So thank you so much. And have a good night. We are off to the next item on our agenda, the approval of the minutes. 6-1, minutes from January 12th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I so move to approve.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the roll call vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 7-1, proclamation, Moab City Law Enforcement Appreciation Day proclamation. I'm going to go ahead and read it because it's an important one. Whereas the City of Moab Police Department employs approximately 24 employees and is composed of brave men and women who continuously summon the courage to fulfill their solemn oath to protect and serve, and pride themselves on delivering compassionate service with professionalism in some of life's most difficult circumstances. And whereas in 2020, the City of Moab Police Department responded to numerous calls for service, ranging from citizen requests for assistance with changing flat tires to in-progress violent felonies. And whereas in 2019, 135 officers were killed in the line of duty throughout the United States, while according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report 2018 LEOCA report, there were 58,866 assaults against law enforcement officers in 2018, resulting in 18,005 injuries. And whereas federal, state, local, and tribal police officers, sheriffs, and other law enforcement officers across the United States serve with valor, dignity, and integrity. And whereas law enforcement officers are charged with pursuing justice for all individuals, performing the duties of a law enforcement officer with fidelity to the constitutional and civil rights of the public the officers serve. And whereas law enforcement officers swear an oath to uphold the public trust, even though through the performance of the duties of a law enforcement officer, the officers may become targets for senseless acts of violence. And whereas the mission of the City of Moab Police Department is to work with the citizens of the City of Moab to preserve life, maintain human rights, protect property, and to promote individual responsibility and community commitment. The success of the department and the city as a whole depends on the integrity in everything we do, pride in our work, dedication to our citizens, and being the best we can be. And whereas the mayor and the city council express their gratitude to the dedicated members of the City of Moab Police Department and for their contributions and sacrifices they have made and continue to make on a daily basis to the security and well-being of our community. Now, therefore, I, Emily Niehaus, Mayor of the City of Moab, and the Moab City Council, Utah, do hereby proclaim January 27, 2021, as Moab City Law Enforcement Appreciation Day in the City of Moab, and call upon all citizens to observe this day by taking the time to recognize and acknowledge the impact the City of Moab Police Department makes in our community. Brett, we thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the support.
Yeah. So the January 27th, if you looked at your calendar, you might say, well, hey, that's tomorrow. So tomorrow, as Moab City Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, is a great day for more letters. If people wanted to drop off, we're living in the COVID world, but if people wanted to drop off donuts, is that something that's welcomed on Appreciation Day?
You know, cops and donuts go together like cops and donuts. So we always appreciate donuts.
Okay. Would members of the community, if they wanted to share a sentiment of gratitude, would they just come to the back of City Hall, to the door there?
Please come to the front of City Hall. We have about 20 plus people knock a day, and we tend to go out and see what they need and try and help them, even though we don't let them in the building, but we tend to work with people who knock. So please come to the front of the building.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made the assumption. Okay. Well, I hope that you are showered with appreciation tomorrow. And this proclamation is just one way that we can say thank you as the elected body.
We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Now, are you going to go have a good night?
I think I am. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for
You
sticking
too.
around. That was joyful. Uh-oh. Hold on. I got to open the agenda. Okay. We are now into the meat of the sandwich, as it were. Section 8, Old Business, 8.1, Proposed Ordinance 2021-02, an ordinance enacting a temporary land use regulation prohibiting for a period of 180 days the new development or expansion of vehicle sales, rentals, or leasing commercial outdoor recreational uses, commercial and recreational tour companies, outfitters and guide services as they pertain to all-terrain vehicles as defined by and defined under Utah Code 41-6A-102 and 41-22-2. This is briefing and possible action. Nora, Laurie, thank you for joining us for this discussion item. I'm sure you've got a little bit to share with us, Nora, before we move forward with action, but I will welcome the motion when it comes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Hello, everyone. So based upon our discussions at the last meeting, which were a little bit far-ranging, but I drafted a temporary land use regulation that we're allowed to do by state code that basically says upon the date of adoption of this ordinance, that we will not accept any new applications new applications for any new businesses related to ATVs as it's defined in the code. So I drafted that and you have it before you. As I mentioned in the memo that was in your packet, basically what I did is I took many of the whereases from the joint resolution that the city and council had that you approved a few months ago, because there was some really great information there about, impact of these vehicles and noise to the community of Moab and to its citizens. And so that really demonstrates the need to move forward with this as an emergency or temporary land use regulation as allowed by code. So that's where most of the whereases came from. In terms of the language relating to the resolution itself and the section of the code, I drew from state law. I actually drew directly from some of the language in state law. And I also included some of the language that we used when we did the overnight accommodation temporary zoning regulations. This is the same kind of action as was taken for the temporary zoning or temporary land use regulation for overnight accommodations. So it's basically the same action, and it directs staff to move forward with modifications to the land use code to better regulate ATVs as they're defined in the code. And we aren't saying what exactly we need to do at this point in time. We're just saying that we need to do something. And until then, we're not going to accept any new applications for these types of uses. One of the things that I know was discussed at the last meeting, and I didn't hear complete consensus on, is expansion and whether or not we would allow expansion of fleets or improvements to businesses or expansion to selling dry goods, for example. And so the draft I put in your packet includes a prohibition on expansions as well, but based upon a comment by Karen, I drafted a new draft that takes out the or expansion language, and it adds a definition for an established ATV business, meaning the ATV vehicles and vehicle sales, outdoor recreational uses, commercial and recreational tour companies, outfitters, and guide services that have a valid business license as of the date of the adoption of this ordinance. So it's everybody that has a current business license as of today or whenever if and when you decide to adopt this. And then I've also added some language that talks about Section 2, established ATV businesses. And I can put this up on the screen. ATV businesses as defined in Section 1 definitions shall be allowed to improve their properties with applicable city permits, such as a site plan or building permit. Businesses may, and this is up to you guys, or may not,
depending on how you want to go. Increase the number of ATVs for rental sales, leasing, touring, and guide services. Businesses may also increase or modify the sale of accessories and soft goods. There's also there's something in there about them being able to improve the property.
Shall we right now solicit the feedback from the council so that we know?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have, just for your information, there are about 20 businesses that advertise some kind of ATV/Jeep rentals. And thanks to Marcy for putting all this information together. And she has it all color coded about the types of ATVs they advertise, everything. It's really wonderful. About 7 or 8 of those actually advertise for some kind of an ATV as defined by the state code. Several of the Jeep businesses are probably just stock Jeeps, and they're not qualified as ATVs. Some of the other Jeep companies rent Jeeps or take Jeep tours that we know are modified, and those would be considered ATVs, just for your information. So I have a couple, let me share this real quick, and then I have a couple specific questions for the council. Can you see that?
Yes, that's
Okay.
very clear. Thank you.
So you can just see.
Connie, you're saying no, you can't see it?
I can't read it.
Oh, okay.
Very little, yes. Maybe we could go 1 page at a time.
I'm trying.
Just got to get real close, like this.
I'd have to get in there with it. I can't read it.
Go
Yeah,
big in Microsoft Word.
So what I've done, just to follow along, is I've taken out all the or expansion language.
I'm sorry, Nora, can you just go to the top and can we just identify any red? Because,
Okay.
Thank you.
So I took out the or expansion language. And these, it's totally up to you. I'm just, trying to provide some options for you. And then again, I deleted the or expanded language. Same here. Then I provided a definition of established ATV businesses. And then I added a section that talks about established ATV businesses, saying that they can do improvements, and that they may or may not, depending on what direction you give me, increase the number of ATVs, and that they can increase or modify the sale of accessories or soft goods. So those are the changes that I made.
So then suggested motions would be
well, let me ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
So do you want to allow established businesses? What I heard at the last meeting was you want to allow established businesses to make improvements to their properties, correct?
Hey, let's go back to the grid so we can see each other's faces now that we've reviewed the language change.
Okay.
Thanks.
So do you want to allow established businesses to be able to improve their property, make improvements of their property?
So if we don't have a problem with that, say yes with the hand up.
Yes. Do you want to allow that? Okay, excellent. Do you want to allow expansion of the number of vehicles for the existing businesses?
So if that is a yes, we raise our hand.
This isn't a yes hand. This is a question hand.
Okay.
I want to see this that I can read before I say yes or no. The revised edition is very different than what is in our packet. And I feel like what we were doing with the edition that we have in our packet was taking a tire iron to a few businesses. And as much as I agree with our citizens to be heard today, and as much as I understand that something needs to be done, that particular version is not going to stop noise. It is not going to stop bad behavior. It's not going to stop incorrect perceptions of what we are trying to do as a council. This second version is more fair to our established businesses from what I've seen. I haven't had it, this is all I've seen of it. So I want to have a chance to digest that before I say yes or no. I don't want to have to say to our constituents in April or May, when the noise has not changed and the bad behavior is still there, well, we did all we can do. Well, I don't think that this is that. I think the mayor's made some really good inroads with a lot of these people, but I understand her frustration. So that's kind of where I am with it.
I totally understand that. And I know you've been really consistent on that. So that's a totally valid point of view. If you folks decide you don't want to do this at all, that's fine. This is one little piece of the big picture. All this does is give us for sure 180 days to work on it, whatever changes we want to make. And again, I have no preference. I just developed this to see if this is the way you want to go. If you don't, that's fine. If you want to take extra time and take a look at this new language, that's fine too. Part of the purpose of these temporary regulations is that they really apply when there are situations of health, safety, and welfare, and where it's really something that is significant and impacts our citizens. So this is it's a process that does not require public input, does not require review by our planning commission. So it comes to you directly to do what you wish with, and we could come back and talk about it next time. You could give me direction tonight.
Well, let's get the questions coming.
Okay.
It looks like Ronnie has some questions. Go ahead, Ronnie.
So can you all tell me if you want to allow the expansion of the number of vehicles for existing businesses?
So Nora, I'll get to that in a second. I had a clarifying question, and that was just, I would imagine we have several options tonight. I mean, one would be to go forth with voting on what's in our packet. One would be to take more time and look at the other version you've created. My understanding of the TLUR, so maybe you could just clarify this, is if you pass them, the clock starts on the 180 days, and you use that time to figure out what kind of changes you'd like to make and bring them through to produce potential new code or other suggested changes to vote on. So in that sense, it's a little bit I understand there's messaging, one could convey here directly or indirectly, but to a certain extent, it doesn't tie our hands to necessarily maybe vote on what's in the packet and still come out in the direction of deciding to allow expansion. Part of, I think, what confuses me and makes it difficult, I'm kind of like Tawny, it's hard for me to vote on something I haven't seen, but I kind of thought that the idea was we were going to vote what was on the packet tonight. And then in the course of that time from the last meeting, that we were going to be collecting information on things like fleet size to help inform us, because I can't. So anyway, that was just my statement. And then one of my questions was, can you just remind us what the definition in this context is of expansion? Because I think that includes some things and it doesn't include some others. So can you just remind me what that means in this context?
Sure. I think, well, it is whatever you want it to be, but so there are different kinds of improvements for sure. So people that have an existing business and they want to do drought tolerant landscaping, or they want to improve it, or even make the building a little bigger and all that. Great, cool, no problem. So then the question is, do you want them to be able to expand their fleet? Which is kind of a big and question that you may or may not want to. And then the third is, can they add, like other kinds of retail sales, like t-shirts and belt buckles, accessories for ATVs and all that kind of stuff? Is it okay to expand that portion of their business? And so the language, as I've amended, would allow for those kinds of expansions.
Which is consistent with the zone as it is. I mean, I was almost surprised we were even going through that exercise, because if you wanted to do a t-shirt shop, that's like an expansion of soft goods, but selling t-shirts is allowable in, most all the zones where we're currently. So I guess I assumed expansion was totally permittable if it was not expanding the rental or touring of machines. But that
I just wanted to define it a little more closely. Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, Nora and I talked about that today, and we think it would just be helpful for the council to make that clear tonight, that if you are limiting it to vehicles, that it would be good to make that clear tonight. And I think Councilmember Dressary had it right. Your options, it's very simple, is you can vote on the version that's in the packet, up or down, or you can vote up or down on the revised version that that Nora's presented. Or the third thing is you can table it. I think one point to make, though, is that if you do pass 180-day moratorium, that's the time limit. At that point, you can either decide you want to do some other like permanent land use changes, or you can decide you don't, after investigating it, you don't want to do any at all. And after the moratorium expires, there's no further action you want to take regarding land use changes. I just wanted to make that point clear, is you could make changes permanently, or you could decide after 180 days you don't want to. That's an option as well.
Thank you. Karen?
You're
muted.
Sorry, I was gonna say I'm Tawny 100%. I have zero interest in micromanaging the existing businesses that we have. I do not want to tie their hands and allowing them to be able to grow, and especially after a COVID episode like we've gone through. There's a lot of businesses I know from personal experience. We had to sell off inventory just to pay bills. And so I believe that has happened with ATV businesses as well. And then now we're stuck in a situation where there's not the supply, because the supply chain with imports has seized. And so, I mean, I would feel better if we knew what numbers we're talking about. I mean, if we're even saying they can't expand, let's say they only have 3 vehicles and we're saying they can't have a 4th. So I was hoping that there was going to be more due diligence done by knowing what businesses, what kind of inventory they have. I don't feel that having, putting these restrictions on existing businesses is going to help the situation. We are not addressing the issue. The issue is the fact that it is, it's a quality of life issue for us as residents of Moab. And the best thing that we can do, which our hands are tied as local legislators, is to get these things off the road. So I understand that staff is trying to use the tools that we have. I think in noise ordinances and speed limits and doing everything like that, allowing new businesses, I think that is justifiable, just like we did with the overnight accommodations. We didn't allow new hotels and motels. I'm fine with that, but I do not want to punish the existing businesses.
I understand. Let me just talk a little bit about the due diligence part. The decision makers, so the county's commission and the city council and various members have been working on this survey or questionnaire or whatever it is, to send out to the business owners that ask a specific number of questions, so that the questions they ask are going to be all the same for all the businesses. So that, and it includes information like how many of each kind of vehicle they have. I didn't want to step on the toes of that effort, because I could see it's moving forward. And so I didn't want these people to be questioned and then questioned again and then get a survey. You know what I mean? I didn't really want to step on the toes of that process, which is also a very valid process and part of this big picture. So that's why, I mean, I could give you some estimates, but I think that process, that's another part of the little piece of the puzzle. So what this does is just doesn't really do anything more than the resolution that you already did. And if you want to really depend on just the resolution that you approved, one of the things that does is it does not allow new business licenses for these kinds of things, then it doesn't allow new business licenses. And so they wouldn't be necessarily coming through a land use process. So the choice is yours. I provided a tool, and if you want to go that way, fine. If not, that's fine too.
Tawny?
I have a comment and a quick question. The difference I see in this and when we did the moratorium on overnight accommodations is we were being overrun by big corporate entities. We were being inundated with Marriotts and Hiltons and Hyatts. And the existing businesses are small, locally owned mom and pop businesses. It's kind of comparing apples and oranges. And my quick question is, have we had any applications? I think last meeting, this question was asked if we had any applications for new businesses, and the answer last meeting was no. In the last 2 weeks, have we had applications for new businesses?
We had a business license come through, but I think it was just, I don't know if it was a new owner for an existing business. There was a modification, but no new businesses have asked for a business license, nor have they contacted the planning department for any kind of a land use request.
Wasn't there a Jeep tour company that asked to expand and include ATVs in their fleet?
Yes.
Yes.
There was one that's contacted us and wanted to do 2 additional.
So while there hasn't been applications, there have certainly been inquiries.
Yes. And right now, we don't know, we don't ask on our business license application how many vehicles they have or what type. Hopefully, one of the changes that will come out of this is that our business license form will change so that we get a little bit more information when we issue those business licenses. But that's another
agreement with Karen. I'm okay saying no new businesses for 6 months, for 180 days, but I don't want to hamstring current businesses that have worked so hard. And this has been mentioned before. These tour companies really have been our allies. I looked at some of their websites today, and most of them, most of them have tours where people follow a guide, whether they rent their machines or whether they follow in their own machines. And if there are less of them out there, there just aren't those eyes out there, and they care about the trails, and they care about the neighborhoods that they go through. So I'm leaning towards,
sorry.
I'm leaning towards, I want to see the new version, and just, I don't think that 2 weeks is going to make a big deal, make a big difference.
Karen, were you going to share something? No. Okay. I am grateful, Nora, that you were responsive to creating the edits to the ordinance. I do think that you captured the intent of what Tani and Karen are speaking about in your edits. It is complicated to do it, to vote on something when, just having been presented to it. So I do understand that procedural concern. In that language, so in that edit language, you were going to ask the council. So if we were wanting to create an exception, is it just for soft goods or everything? And it sounds to me like Tani and Karen, you're in favor of the existing businesses allowed to expand. They may expand for both more machines and more t-shirts and more tours.
And prettier, whatever site improvements they want to make their business
improvements too. I don't think any of us would, oppose landscaping or site improvements, but I think the bigger deal is like the tours and more rentals and more tours. So it sounds to me, so I'm just trying to clarify here, Tani and Ronnie are comfortable with allowing businesses to expand, more tours, more rentals, but no new businesses for this 180 days. Is that correct?
I mean, am I on mute again? No. So yes, it is correct, but I guess I wish I knew what the numbers were that we were dealing with. So if a company is wanting to expand it by 100 ATVs, I mean, that is, if they had 100 and they're trying to double it, or if they're trying to triple their fleet, I mean, there's, that doesn't
would leave them open to be able to do that. What your suggestion would leave it open for them to be able to do that. And I don't know, honestly, I mean, I'm a data girl, and I don't know that you can accurately get that data, because that would be, asking businesses if they're going to expand, but then depending on reporting as opposed to hard facts of whether or not they do purchase machines. You know what I mean?
But are we considering, is it expansion if they've got 10 machines and 2 of them die, and they have, I mean, is replacing existing machines, does that end that?
No,
you should clarify that. Yeah, I mean, I think you can clarify in your debate this evening that you're not intending expanded to include replacement.
and like we said in the last meeting, we could have them prove fleet numbers and tour numbers pretty easily by providing registration of vehicles that would then date, the number of vehicles. And so then, Karen?
I'm just curious, Mayor, have you heard from any of, I mean, I know you've been reaching out to businesses. Have you heard, I mean, what are they aware of this legislation or this ordinance that we're trying to pass? I mean, I haven't heard anything. I don't know if anybody else has, and I'm curious to.
I think the assumption is that we've already acted on it because of our resolution.
Right. So just to clarify, the resolution was about business licenses. And so the moratorium was on allowing any new business licenses. And Councilmember Dressery had this question, and we clarified that the moratorium that you had in the previous resolution related to granting any new business licenses. It's true that someone could get a new property and either start developing it for the purposes of a future ATV business, knowing that they couldn't get a license, but right now they still could do that land use. They could do that. And so this is the land use portion that addresses that. And again, it's a slightly different tool, but it addresses what Nora was saying about the actual development of a property or business as opposed to getting the license to operate it. So there's a distinction between what you did before and what's before you now.
Does
The
that make
mayor,
sense?
I
Yes.
haven't spoken yet. I'm opposed to allowing expansions of fleets for on-street usage. If businesses want a trailer to expand, I'm okay with that, but the impacts we're dealing with are related to the on-street use of ATVs in the city. And I think we need to cap it right here. We have heard repeatedly, and we know from direct personal experience what these impacts are. And we use zoning to manage impacts from incompatible uses all the time. This is a temporary land use regulation. It's not the be all and end all, it's just giving us some breathing room. And if we had a noisy use that wanted to locate in a residential neighborhood, we wouldn't allow it. And that's what we have going on here. It's virtually an industrial use that's being carried out in residential zones. And it's our duty, I believe, to protect our citizens and our homeowners from these impacts. So I hope we can pass a proposed ordinance tonight. I share the concern about passing something that we haven't seen. I don't know why we didn't get a copy of this beforehand. So I would be in favor of passing the proposed ordinance that we have before us, have staff present their proposed drafts, and then amend it at the next meeting. But let's get the ball rolling. And the reason for doing a moratorium is to close the door for a very short-term basis while we work on our land use code. So
let me repeat. So you're proposing passing ordinance, the ordinance that was published in the packet, and then during the 100 days, looking at language that would incentivize businesses to trailer, because then they would be given permission to expand fleet at that time.
no.
Something
I'm
like that.
proposing that we pass the ordinance as written, and in the next 2 weeks, if we want to amend it to provide these clarifications that are being discussed here, we do so. But then what the final code looks like, I believe that is a much bigger discussion. So I'm not arguing for what that final code revisions, if any, look like.
But the argument for capping use now is that we could use a tool to incentivize trailering.
Yes, the ultimate goal is, the ultimate goal is to reduce the noise, but given the challenges imposed by the state legislature on regulating vehicle types and repeated conversations with city and county staff have made it clear that directly regulating the noise may be difficult. So we may have to use an imperfect, indirect method of regulating land uses, which I agree, it's kludgy, but I feel like we should exhaust every possible tool, and then we can go to the state legislature and say, we need more tools, or if we haven't solved it.
I would just say that we could let the other council members weigh in, and then someone could make a motion on the ordinance that's in the packet.
Mike?
Excuse me, slight wrinkle on what Kaylin said. I also would prefer the first version, the one that's in the packet now that precludes expansion. I agree with Karen and Tani that it is an imposition. You could make the argument that it's only for 180 days. It hardly matters whether we say you're going to expand your fleet or not. I think most businesses have already done a lot of expansion, and it probably won't be a backbreaker for them if they can't do it for 180 days. And having said all that, unless we come up, this cannot be the final, in my opinion, this cannot be the final answer, all right? Because this motion in front of us right now, all by itself, is hardly worth implementing. I mean, I don't think it won't solve the noise problem. That's the problem. And why would I want to get in business's way if it's not going to solve the noise problem? Of all the proposals that have been floated around between city and county, and I think most of you guys have been participating in that, none of them are perfect. And as I've stated quasi-publicly locally here, the one that I think has any legs at all, for what it's worth, is one that focuses on local businesses and requires them to check their fleet for 1287 standards, all right, and make sure those conform to that, together probably with less frequent on-site road checks, as Brett has suggested. And even that is not going to make a hell of a lot of difference, frankly, unless we can further lower the dBA limits involved with the 1287 noise check to make them look more like a passenger vehicle. That's a dicier thing because the lawyers have not decided not whether we can do that or not, both at a state level and at a federal level. So all those negotiations are still in front of us. And unless they're successful, I would let the 180 days expire and let businesses go back to what they were doing. I hope that doesn't happen because we're all sick of the noise. Okay, but this is enough tough nut to crack. But to get going on the thing, the only reason for not doing it tonight is it gives us a little bit later start on the 180 days. But otherwise, I think I would go ahead and get going to get the ball rolling. At least the business community will know that we're serious about trying to do something.
So I've heard from all council members, and I am wondering, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the ordinance. Let me get in front of me, Emily, as written, the one that's in the packet. So let me get that in front of me. You want me to read the whole thing, Emily?
What I want from you is, are you the motion to adopt ordinance 2021-02 as presented in our packet?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for the motion. Thank you, Kaylin, for the second. Discussion. Karen.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned this is overreach. I'm concerned that we are not solving for the problem at all. I mean, the ultimate goal, I mean, you asked what the ultimate goal is to give, to make the state legislators allow us to legislate for our community and get these things off the roads and trailered. So to give municipalities jurisdiction over this use, which obviously we don't have. They made that impossible, but it happens in all the surrounding states, surrounding Utah, which it's really frustrating that there's such a disconnect between state legislators and what we're dealing with locally. I don't think we're addressing the problem. And yeah, and what numbers are we using right now? So are we saying, like, what's going to happen if businesses are replacing, like, what numbers are we even going off of? This, it feels very incomplete.
I will share some just anecdotal data from Sand Flats booth that that the majority of, like, as far as the booth goes, that they and of course this is qualitative, so they're not counting, but they feel the majority of UTVs going to Sand Flats are either via tour or rentals, for what it's worth. That it's not one-off users. And that's just anecdotal, like, not, you know, that's the data that I've heard. Ronnie?
Okay. I'm sorry, I think I read this originally on Sunday and things don't stick as well as they used to. Lori or Nora, can you remind us in the current version in the packet, do we have something included in there now to give, that would give a business owner a sense of what we consider existing fleet based on what date? Or is that something that gets injected in this 180-day process? I mean.
Is your question existing? So it would be existing as of the date the ordinance is passed. Is that what your question is?
I guess that's part of my question. I'm just trying to understand the context. Like, on the one hand, that makes sense to me. If there are truly businesses who maybe had to, you know, sell some of their fleet this year due to COVID, I don't know if that's the case, but if it was, I don't know if it's any fairer to say that date is, you know, January of, you know, 2020. But without context for that, I guess I'm just wondering if you, Lori or Nora, have any suggestion there.
Well, we could certainly wait until after the survey is done and we have more information if you want all that data. But we don't know. We wouldn't know how many they had in January of 2020 either. So it's, it's slippery for sure.
I think we would rely on staff to operationalize how to collect the information from businesses, have them prove that I made the recommendation of registration of vehicles as a pretty solid. So that'd be like what you were saying, Ronnie, pick a date, but that would be up to staff to operationalize what we're saying, which is the fleet at the, their 20, their fleet size prior to this meeting. And it'd probably be over the course of 2020 is what, would set the cap.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Karen?
Just quickly, Emily, I'm just, Joel gave a report a while back that there was, I think it was Joel's 2,500 or 3,000 UTVs going up Sand Flats Road. It was something like that. There is no way in heck that those are all coming from rental businesses.
So
the amount of people who are bringing their private UTVs. I mean, I own a rental condo, and Rim Village is packed to the brim with private owners of those vehicles. And so now we're just, they're going to come. There's no way we're stopping that. And so I'm just, again, I feel, hamstringing businesses. We're not dealing with the issue here.
Well, I really appreciate Karen and Tawny's, interest in protecting our local businesses. I definitely, I sympathize with that quite a bit. And I think that message is loud and clear. I think that what's before us is a pause button. And if we want to support and incentivize our local businesses, then this moratorium gives us the opportunity to think of strategies for that as well. I will say that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But just to Mike's point, 180 days can kill a business. And COVID is a perfect example of what's happened around the nation with even 3 months of closure, how businesses have shut down. So, to be flippant about 180 days, that's a serious comment.
Well, Karen, may I ask then, since they can run the way they ran last year and they were profitable last year, why not this year with what they got? That's my question for you.
Well, and I'm not saying, I don't even know what they have though, Mike.
Well, and we could certainly look at 2019. We can look at an average and take the top of the average. We could look at 3 years data, take the top amount and set the cap there. I think that's, that would be helpful direction for for staff.
Well, Emily, let me throw out one more thing. Karen has a point, all right? You guys are talking about all in principle. Yeah, guys, please don't expand your fleets. That's what I really want to say. But if it's going to get into a science fair project, with, spreadsheets and calculations and all kinds of hassles with business owners, then it gets to be really a burden on them. And if I was the owner, I wouldn't want to do that either. If that's the case, notwithstanding Kaylin's objections to, we want to get serious about this, maybe I would come around to compromise by saying, fine, go ahead and expand, although we wish you wouldn't, kind of thing, and then go from there. I would agree to that sentiment, I guess, despite the motion I just made.
Then perhaps what I should do is call for the vote on this motion that is on the table, unless there's any further deliberation.
Mayor, or if Mike wants to amend his motion, he could as well.
So an option for Mike to amend his motion, which could get complicated, but it is a suggestion that Joel, you are making, is, and the reason why it could get complicated is because we have an alternative option, which is a draft that some members have stated they don't feel comfortable supporting without having more time to read it.
If Mike wants to pull his motion and make a new motion, because he's the original maker of the motion, it won't be complicated. If someone else makes the amended motion, then he can do it. Because Mike made the motion, he can either retract his motion or amend his own motion without, we just would need a second again.
Okay,
Yeah,
were you
may I
talking about retracting or amending, Mike?
I'm retracting.
Okay. Okay, well then there's no longer a motion on the table.
Someone else may wish to make a motion.
Ronnie?
I would be happy to make a motion, and I will say, because I mean, I do think we all need to put ourselves out there. I am not naive enough to think that something like this is going to solve all the problems that we have with UTVs. But personally, as a council member who's been doing this since 2016 and under the weight of all of the feedback I've gotten from residents, like Kaylin, I feel like it's my obligation to pursue all the tools before us. And I am going to make a motion in favor of ordinance 2021-02 in our packet for that reason. And also because I feel like this opens the door to the 180 days. I would like to see a calendar that holds us at every meeting for an update and steps to meet so that we have things to do that keep us on track and moving this thing forward, because I don't want to see a TULUR where we get down to the end of 180 days and haven't accomplished something. But I feel like our residents are sick and tired of saying enough is enough. You guys need to get out there. You need to try every tool you have. And this is a legal tool to open dialogue and explore our options. And in that process, if we don't decide we want to go a different direction, or I mean, this just opens the door. So there is no direction really clearly right now, but this allows us to put everything on the table and pick some things that seem best from the input that we get. I feel like it is high time, it is past time to get this sucker going. So I will read this guy. I move to adopt ordinance 2021-02, enacting a temporary land use regulation prohibiting for a period of 180 days the development and expansion of new vehicle sales, rentals, or leasing, commercial outdoor recreational uses, commercial and recreational tour companies, outfitters, and guide services as they pertain to all-terrain vehicles, ATVs, as defined by Utah State Code 41-6A-102 and 41-22-2.
Thank you, Ronnie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. And just for clarification, that's the original presented, not the redlined version.
This is the version in our public packet for tonight's meeting.
Discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a roll call vote. One moment. Mike.
Nay.
Tawny.
No.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
No.
Okay. This proposed ordinance fails to pass. As presented, are there any further motions on this agenda item before we move on? Karen.
Can I make a motion to table this until we have the revised?
Yes, I will take that motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tawny. So with clarification, you'd like to table this agenda item and we will bring it back to at the next council meeting?
Yes, but with the
red line.
Yes, the red line version.
With direction to staff, yes, the red line version, and as much data as is humanly possible to incorporate.
Okay. I will roll call vote. Ronnie?
This is the motion to table, right?
Yes.
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Okay, motion to table passes 5-0. We're now in new business 9-1. Levi, thanks for joining us. Award of the 2020 and 2021 water meter purchase to Meterworks Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $140,000. Levi, I don't know if you plan to answer any questions, but I would also just entertain a motion from the council as well. Tawny?
I'll make a motion. I move to award the 2020-2021 water meter purchase to Meterworks Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $140,000.
Thank you, Tawny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Levi, thanks for being here. Does anyone have questions for Levi? Karen?
Hey, Levi, thank you so much for answering my questions earlier in the Google Doc. I'm just, so it's interesting with this this metering system that we're implementing. Is there like, or do you feel like, I know it would be super expensive to go to another system because there's only one source in Utah. Like, are we ever going to get to a point where it's like, it's going to make sense to try a different smart meter and it would be more cost effective for us later?
Yeah, to steer away from Neptune at this point would be really, really expensive. You would have to replace all your software, all the billing that in the treasurer's office, and every single meter in the system. It would be extensive.
Levi, are these meters outrageously more expensive for no more gain in performance? Or, I mean, are we already backed into a hard place here or what?
They're comparable. There's pros and cons of all of them. The ones we use are brass. There's plastic ones out there they're slightly cheaper but less durable. So the longevity is comparable for price. It's pretty competitive. It's a very, very competitive field. So if we could save money somewhere else by using a different, I would suggest that. But the cost of manpower and changing everything out and the whole entire system upgrade, it wouldn't be very cost effective at all to make that decision.
Thank you for answering those questions, Levi, and for joining us at almost 10 p.m. I appreciate that. I'm
No
sure
worries.
it's a very long day.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
any other questions for Levi? I'll call for the vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Tawny?
You're
Tawny?
muted, Tawny.
I'm sorry. Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
What just happened?
Mike?
Karen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Did I get y'all? Okay.
Yeah, now.
Motion passes 5-0. Sorry, I lost my place in the line and I got real confused. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Levi. Thank you, council. Sorry for that little mix up. 9-2, culinary water resources policy and conservation measures. Briefing and possible action.
Hi all. Mayor, I know the hour is late. Is there a time constraint that you'd like to place on me and Chuck to get this done? We have a 20-minute presentation followed by discussion, but
I think 20 minutes would be too long for us this evening. And I know we do try to wrap up by 10 p.m. Is there a way to, so let me start by asking council members, you've read your packets and so reviewed reviewed the items therein. So I wonder, what we need to expand upon versus where we are just with the information in the packet.
I'm prepared to make a motion. I felt like the packet materials were sufficient.
Okay. I would accept that motion.
I move to direct staff to develop the draft water shortage contingency ordinance and a corresponding water shortage contingency plan and time of day, time of the week water resource management ordinance.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to say, Carly and Chuck, You're not off the hook. I think what we'll do is a follow-up workshop where we can dig a little deeper into the weeds that are growing from water runoff.
Sounds great. We'll be ready.
Do we have any questions for Carly or Chuck at this time? Karen?
I had one easy one, I think. It's easy. I noticed in the packet there was a little chart or little list of the first violation, second violation, and the fine that would be associated with. How is this going to be reported? I guess that's the best word, not enforced, but reported.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I want to clarify for the public as well, that was a sample ordinance. So that's not necessarily what we would be doing. That's important. That's just an example of community, doing that. And I don't know if that answers your question, council member, but I think it would be any enforcement would be very education focused. So there would be many, I wouldn't even call them warnings. It would be like outreach and expanded levels of outreach, probably through the sustainability director. I imagine code enforcement would make a note. The sustainability director would see, they would report it to the sustainability director. They'd get a mailer or a flyer, and that would be that kind of outreach. And then probably a graduated fine schedule just to put some teeth into the most egregious abusers. So we'll see if it's most helpful when folks are educated rather than penalized. And we would want any of these ordinances to reflect that philosophy.
What I don't want to see is neighbors with their Gladys Kravitz binoculars spying on their neighbors and turning them in.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a reporting system, but it would be just that general thing. And that's also feedback we can get as we develop the ordinances too. If you don't want us to act on those kinds of calls, that could be the policy.
Okay, thanks, Carly.
Karen?
Well, I was just going to say if it would be worth Carly just giving an elevator recap of what's happening. I mean, just for those interested in who haven't read the packet via YouTube or, that we're talking about water conservation here and then, setting times.
Yes, I'm so happy to do that. That's a really great idea. So the two ordinances that we're going to work to develop with extensive public engagement, with you involved, with the water board involved, and are a basically time of day of the week ordinance, meaning we would be trying to move people to start watering at night. So not watering less, just at night, and to certain days of the week, because truthfully, and for your turf, it doesn't need to be watered every day. 2 or 3 days a week is the best way to water basically all kinds of grass out there. This would apply to irrigation systems, sprinkler irrigation systems. So not hand watering. If you're watering your potted plants, that's okay during the day. Drip irrigation would be okay anytime. But just implementing this really kind of standard practice that's easy to communicate and relatively easy and cheap to enforce. There are huge water savings available by implementing this really simple practice. Chuck has some numbers on that. It's great. It's like 30 to 50% of your irrigation water gets saved. So that's one of them. And the second one is an ordinance where you would be authorizing staff to develop a shortage contingency plan. So that if we have a shortage because of a drought or in a mega drought, if we lose a source, if there's a water quality issue, we have a tiered level of response in terms of what kind of water restrictions we need to have. So it's primarily an emergency plan, but also, tier 3 would be the big emergency, but we'd be able to enact softer tiers when we're sort of foreseeing perhaps an emergency on the horizon and we want to be proactive about managing it or mitigating it. So that would also be a longer process. A plan that's probably a 4 or 5 month process, but at least this ordinance would authorize us to start developing it.
Really awesome. And I look forward to the workshop. So we should determine, I did say you're not off the hook, but It sounds to me like you're gonna put together an engagement process. So it's not gonna be next council meeting. It's gonna be a schedule of events that we're gonna be slotted into, correct?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Will
And
you, for the next council meeting, though, report back to council, kind of a loose time frame?
absolutely.
Okay, that would be helpful. Any other questions, Mike?
Yeah, as long as I got Chuck here as well. So Carly, if we pass this time of day thing, for example, then you know what's going to happen. Everybody is going to water between 6 and 9 o'clock at night before they go to bed, which means there's going to be a huge demand on the city's water flow during those hours. And so what would happen to pressure in certain parts of town, Chuck?
That's a good question. I don't know that the research says that everyone's going to go between 6 and 9. I set my $40 timer on for 4 in the morning. That's the time of the day that I like to water my lawn, because I happen to have on my sprinkler system a $40 system, a timer. But I'll get you a better answer for that one. Okay, that's a legit question, and I need to look at our demand models and stuff, and I'll run that scenario and get back with you at the next workshop.
Well,
if that's okay, Mike.
It might be that it actually helps our, because we're not going to be running irrigation and like culinary water during the day, it might actually spread out our demands over time. So it probably would help the pressure systems.
So it's a two-part thing. The first is what is the current pattern of use, which with current watering, and then the second would be, as we analyze that, is there a patterned way that we could inform residents? So like if you live on one side of 191, you water Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and if you're on the other side, you're on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? So we could pretty easily run it together like that. But I guess Mike's kind of asking you, Chuck, to be the watchdog for that.
Yeah, there's all sorts of research that's been done. I was going to share some data tonight. If we just wanted to find out to make sure council was interested in us pursuing it, we'll pursue and try and answer as many questions as you have.
Awesome.
There's a lot of data on it.
I remember when I was canvassing 4 years ago, I ran across one man over here on the east side of town who lived through the water crisis back in the 1950s, and he swore that if the city ever had to do that again, he was leaving town. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming from farmers and ranchers that we need to conserve water at this point. So times they are changing. Karen?
Just quickly, so Carly, is there opportunities for us to potentially get grants for smart meters for folks?
Yeah, I would want this to be part of like a robust campaign. So if the sustainability director or whoever it is, who's sort of spearheading this, identifies someone who's having trouble complying with this ordinance for whatever reason, they don't have a timer on their irrigation system or something else like that, we hook them up with, we facilitate the acquisition of those tools. So there are plenty, like EPA has a lot of stuff, WaterSense is one of the tools too, lots of resources that we want to match up with the ordinance. So folks are equipped to with not only the knowledge of what to do, but also have the means to do it.
Perfect, thank you.
The one thing we really just still need in our valley though is the human capital, those irrigation specialists. I think you have like I experienced in 2020 alongside the pandemic, 2 valve boxes failed. Like my 2 manifolds failed. They just aged out. And it was like really very difficult to find somebody to come and help me through the replacement of 2 manifolds.
Yep.
And so, I mean, as much as grant money would be great, I would love to just have more bodies that do this type of work, both landscaping and irrigation in particular. So maybe we could incentivize irrigation companies to hire new employees and take on additional jobs. That is a grant I would do. I would be in favor of. Because I think we're limited to our capacity of how residents can actually, address their watering issues, because it is a specialized thing to understand how to, set timers. And Chuck, I appreciate your $40 thing, but there's that's, you're probably, that's one zone, right? You got one
No,
zone.
I have 4 zones.
You have 4 zones.
Yeah.
There, and I don't want to drag this out too much, but there is a program. I know that up north in Logan, USU has a sprinkler check program that they do, and they they do the check, the audit, and they train the homeowner about the sprinkler system and say, here's why you're overwatering here, or this is the problem with it, and just sort of gives that homeowner understanding of their sprinkler system. And I think it'd be really cool to talk to Roz about doing something for the USU extension down here. If we could throw some money at them and have some undergrad students available to do that work.
That would be amazing. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I will call for the vote. Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Galen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, staff, so much. We are at item number 10, approval of the bills against the city of Moab. Tawny, is there a motion?
There is. I move to approve the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $183,200.55.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Kaylin was first. Discussion, Tawny?
I kind of mentioned what are they called?
More bucks.
Yeah, those things. It's 10 o'clock. I've been awake since 4:30. That was actually the most, interesting item. We have really done a really good job of cutting back and buying more local than we did even a year ago. Nothing is jumping out at me on here. Our Dominion Energy was $11,000.
I wonder how much of that's the MRAC.
Rocky Mountain Power was $29,000 and $2,600 was the MRAC. And Dominion Energy was $11,058.64 was the MRAC.
Thank you for that report of items of interest. Okay, any other discussion? I will call for the vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Galen?
Aye.
Wonderful. We are at item 11, which is our executive closed session. How logistically shall we proceed, Summer?
You're going to need a motion to go into closed session and your second and your vote. And then at that point, I will need to stop the recording or the streaming, but it is required to be recorded.
And we would record on the line here?
Yes.
And then we'll go back to the YouTube to adjourn?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll move to go into closed session.
Thank you, Tawny. Is there a second?
Move a second.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now, it's unanimous. We'll now move into closed session and stop.